Hey everybody, welcome back to the SuperBake podcast. I'm your host, Baker. Let's talk about stuff. So I've been rewatching the X-Men the Animated Series from the 90s on Disney Plus in preparation to watch X-Men 97. The original X-Men show, I watched bits of it when I was a kid, like in elementary school, but like it wasn't something that I watched like in sequential order. It was just one of those things that I watched it when it was on TV. This was back before like we really had a VCR in my house, so I didn't have the option to record things. I just watched them when they were available to me. So, and honestly, if you had asked me like what the different plot lines of the show were, I couldn't tell you. Like it's been so long, I couldn't tell you like every little thing that happens in that show. But it is available on Disney Plus, so I've been going on there and watching it from the very beginning. I'm about halfway through the show. It's like 5 seasons, I think. The number of episodes in each season differs. Like season 1, I think had like 10 episodes, and 3, I think has like over 20 or something like that. So it varies, the episode count. It's got its charm, but it definitely feels like a cartoon that came out in the 90s. The cliches that I've seen in it are the kind of things you would expect to see like in a cheesy 90s cartoon. Just the way the characters talk, the way they behave. One thing I'll definitely say about it is that like it feels like a lot of the plot lines have just been kind of just coming at me just boom, boom, boom really fast. Like they just went through the Phoenix Saga. They fought like Apocalypse. They went through a lot in the show pretty quickly. So I've actually been kind of thrown or taken aback by just how much they've gone through. I never read the comics, so I don't know how faithful it is to that. But yeah, just a lot's happened in a short amount of time. And then they just throw a lot of characters at you all at once. Like I've already seen Cable, Bishop, and I mentioned Apocalypse before. And yeah, it's just like they go into like great detail on these characters, and don't get me wrong, it's entertaining to watch, but it's just sometimes it's really cheesy, and sometimes the episodes come off as being almost kind of corny and weird. The way the characters talk, there's just some lines they have that are just like, oh my god, this is such a 90s cartoon. But overall, I mean, I'm enjoying it. I keep hearing really good things about 97, so I'm excited to watch that. I know I've heard from some of my friends you don't need to have watched the original series to get the gist of 97, as long as you're kind of familiar with some basic story elements as far as how it ends, then you'll probably get through 97 okay. I think as long as you have like just that basic knowledge of who the characters are, then you're probably going to be fine. But I just wanted to watch it because, I never got the chance to really watch it from the beginning when I was a kid. So this is kind of my opportunity to right that wrong, I guess. I'm enjoying it so far. It's just definitely a product of its time. But when I get the chance to actually watch 97, I'll probably give a review of that show at some point. But for today, what I wanted to do was give my review for the new Paper Mario and the Thousand-Year Door on the Nintendo Switch. Came out late May. I finally played through the entire game, and it was everything that I was hoping it would be. This is not going to be a super in-depth review, just because it's not I love the game. It's one of my all-time favorites, but it's not like a super in-depth turn-based RPG. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It's a Mario game. You probably can guess what the story's going to be, or at least you probably have an idea if you've never played it and aren't familiar with it. Anyways, just to kind of get into it, the story is pretty bare bones. Basically, it's another Mario has to rescue Princess Peach. She goes to this town called Rogueport, discovers a hidden map that leads to something called the Thousand-Year Door. It's a mysterious door that seems to lead to either treasure or some kind of ancient power. Nobody seems to know. She gets kidnapped by some mysterious force, and in typical fashion, Mario has to rescue her, joining forces with several really interesting, charming characters in classic Paper Mario fashion, and they go on this big grand adventure to gather the 7 crystal stars and then save Princess Peach from the evil X-Naut force. That's the bad guys in this game. Right off the bat, I just want to say, and I've mentioned this before when I did my reaction to the trailer that came out for this game last September. It's crazy that it's already been that much time. Paper Mario and the Thousand-Year Door is one of my all-time favorite games. I love Paper Mario 64. That game is fantastic too, but Thousand-Year Door has always just held a special place in my heart. It did a lot of changes from the N64 version that I really appreciated, like it gave your partners health. In the original 64 version, when your partners got hit, they would just be incapacitated for a short time. But in this game, they actually have health. That was an awesome change that I liked. Of course, the updated graphics are great too. Something else this game does that I also really appreciated that was really refreshing when I first played it back in 2004 was the fact that Bowser is not the main villain in this game. It's actually, I don't remember what his name was, but it's actually the leader of the X-Nauts. I think his name is Grotus, something like that. So yeah, like Bowser's not the main villain, which was really refreshing. Like he was the main villain in Paper Mario 64, and he's great. He's Bowser. He's always entertaining. But in this one, he's actually he is an antagonist, but he's also kind of comic relief in a sense. Like he shows up several points throughout the game, and his segments are really just kind of an excuse to just slap him into the old classic 2D Mario platforming, and it's really more for comedic effect, but it actually works really well. But yeah, it's nice that this game actually goes in a different direction and has different antagonists. Now, granted, the X-Nauts are not that interesting. Bowser, to me, is definitely a much more interesting main villain, but the actual real main villain of the game is genuinely creepy. So yeah, I think that all works in the game's favor. They do a lot of stuff with this game that I really enjoyed. Like, it's, number one, the graphics, of course, look incredible. Even though it's the Nintendo Switch, which isn't as powerful a gaming machine as like a PC or the PlayStation 5 or the new Xbox, Nintendo still manages to do a lot with this game. Like, Intelligent Systems really went the extra mile, making this game look really good. Like, graphics for me have never really been a big sticking point with games. Like, I can forgive mediocre graphics as long as the game is fun and enjoyable, as long as the story is engaging, the characters are interesting, and the gameplay is fun. I'm not that worried if the game doesn't look great, but in this case, like, it's very stylized. That paper style is just, I don't know, for me, it's always been really aesthetically pleasing. And like, they really just go into the paper aesthetic full force in this game. Like, every level, like, actually looks like it's made of paper. Like, it looks like a diorama almost. Like one little effect that I really appreciated in this was like the water effects. Like, when you stand in water, it's not just like a water effect that they use, like digital water. It actually is, they just use like different colors of like what looks like paper. So like, it's like white paper for like the actual waves and like the suds of the waves that hit you. And then like blue paper for like the outer part of the ocean, like the deeper part of it. It's like, I don't know, it's just really cool that they put that extra detail in there. So yeah, you got the updated graphics in this game. It's pretty faithful to the original, honestly. Like, the original came out 20 years ago on the GameCube, which is wild to think about. I think I was in like early high school when that came out. It's like, I think that was my sophomore year of high school, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's crazy that it's been that long. And you know what? The original still doesn't look bad, in my opinion at least. But yeah, the graphics in this one, it's a night and day difference with how good it looks. But I mean, beyond that though, it's a pretty faithful adaptation to the original, a pretty faithful remake. Like, I've played through the entire game, I've beaten the final boss, I haven't done the side content, at least not very much of it yet, like the Pit of 100 Trials. I'll probably do that at some point, but I've mainly just stuck to the main story. It's pretty faithful to the original, like pretty much beat for beat. It follows the original, almost 100%. There's a few extra stuff they added into this one. There's, I believe, 2 extra secret bosses they added into this game. I'm not going to spoil any of that for you. If you want to play this game, I'll kind of leave that for you to discover on your own. They did add some quality of life improvements to it that I really appreciated. Like, there's this new thing called the partner wheel that you can use. It's like a quick access wheel that you can use to basically select a different partner, like on the fly, really quickly, like when you're playing the game, which was really nice. In the original game, in order to change partners, you had to actually go into the pause menu, go to the party tab, and actually select which party member you wanted to use. And normally that wouldn't be a big deal, but in a game like this, you're swapping between party members constantly because you use their abilities in and out of combat sometimes to hit a switch that's too far for Mario to hit, or to blow something off of a wall that reveals a hidden room, or to blow up a hidden compartment somewhere. You're constantly moving back or switching back and forth between your party members. So having to go into the pause menu over and over again, like, I didn't think about it in the original because I was used to it, but having that partner wheel now, like, I can't imagine going back to that. It's one of those things, like, it's such a small change, but it makes such a huge difference in the game. So really appreciate that they added that in there. Also, too, they really improved, like, the backtracking in this game. That was another sticking point that I had from the original that I forgot about because it had been so long, but, like, there are definitely moments in the original where you have to backtrack. I think it's in Chapter 4 when you go to, is it Twilight Town? there's a segment in there where you have to backtrack from like the main boss's castle back to the town you go to, and you got to do that a few times. And in the original, it was very annoying. That made that one of my least favorite parts of the game, like one of my least favorite chapters. But in this one, they actually put a quick travel pipe that you can use to get back and forth from the village to the boss's castle. And I remember just thinking, like, okay, that's awesome. That's cool that they did that. Like, it feels like Nintendo actually took notes and tried to improve this game. And there's another fast travel system they use for, in the main area, the main hub area, Rogueport, there are pipes you can use where you can actually go to the different locations that you visit in each chapter. So it's another fast travel system they built into this game that, again, was not in the original. And again, it's one of those things like the partner wheel. You don't think about it having that big of an impact because it feels like such a minor thing until you need to go back to those areas, whether for the story or just to get some badge or some extra bonus content that you forgot about, or to do like a side quest. Comes in really handy and shaves off a lot of time on your play time. So again, it's another quality of life feature that they added to this that I really appreciated. That's what it feels like. This game feels like there's a lot of quality of life improvements on top of the updated graphics. The combat system, if you played the original, then you know what to expect. It's turn-based combat, pretty straightforward. It's pretty bare bones in terms of the combat system. There is some depth to it in terms of like different options you have. Like you can upgrade either your health, your flower points, which acts as your mana, and then your badge points, which allows you to equip badges that you can use to give Mario different abilities, Mario and his partners. So like you can use badges to allow yourself to use more than one item in a turn, or to increase your attack power or your defense, or some combination of those things. The badges give you a lot of options for how you can build Mario to your specific play style. So there is some depth to the combat system, but for the most part, it's not really super challenging. That is one thing that I've always kind of noted about the Paper Mario games, at least the original, the first two, the N64 and Thousand Year Door, is that I love them. They're fantastic games. They're really fun, but they're not really difficult. They're not really what I would call challenging games. At least the main story isn't. The secret bosses can definitely be challenging for sure. Like the Pit of 100 Trials is definitely challenging, including the final boss that you fight. But the main story bosses, other than the very final boss, like the Shadow Queen that you fight, is not, like, she's challenging, but everybody else to me is just pretty easy. As long as you just keep your health up and just don't do anything stupid, you'll get through most of the fights pretty much fine. So, and that's kind of how those games have always been to me. I've always kind of thought of the original Paper Mario games as like almost sort of like an introduction to like turn-based RPGs. Like they're not as in-depth as say something like Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy. They're not as challenging as games like that, but they're not really supposed to be. To me, they were always supposed to be just like these quirky, fun or games with like these charming characters, and I think that was supposed to be kind of the main focus of them. At least that was always my interpretation of those games. But yeah, the combat is really fun. They did a good job of making it of basically staying true to the original, but also I feel like there's not really a whole lot they add to the combat in this game, but it just looks really good with the updated graphics. Like I really appreciate that. Like just overall, I think the game plays really well. Like I don't have a lot of criticisms for this game. Like if you like the original, you know pretty much what to expect from this one. Like it's just a fantastic, faithful remake of the original. But if I had to give some criticisms to it, one thing I would say is that in this one, the frame rate is lower than the original. In the original, apparently the frame rate was 60 frames per second. In the new one on the Switch, it is 30 frames per second. I didn't really notice it, but I have heard people say that it's a little distracting, especially people who maybe played the original more recently. Going from that to this, where the frame rate's basically been cut in half, yeah, I can definitely see where maybe some people would find that a little distracting. And admittedly, there were some moments in the game where I did see my frame rate drop a little bit. It's mostly in moments where you have a lot of stuff happening on screen. There are some fights in the game where you fight like tons of enemies, like literally hundreds are on the screen at once. And I did notice in those moments, sometimes the frame rate would slow down a little bit. It didn't cause any issues for me in terms of like my enjoyment of the game, but yeah, it was something that I noticed. So if you're somebody that frame rate is a big deal for you, then I could see that maybe being an issue for this game. Other than that, though, I don't really have a lot of negative things to say about it. Like, if you enjoyed the original, I think that this one not only stays true to it, but I think it builds upon it and improves on maybe some of the things that were lacking in the original. Like I mentioned before, the quality of life features, the fast travel system. Like, it really feels like Nintendo took note from the original and tried to make it better. And I think in most ways they did. The frame rate, again, might be a bit of a problem for some people. Like I said, if you're the kind of person that really craves like that 60 frame per second, or at least close to it, this might be a problem for you. But I mean, with the Nintendo Switch 2 not too far in the future, like I think it's supposed to come out next year, at least that's the rumor. You know, who knows, maybe there'll be a version of this game that'll run at 60 frames per second. I wouldn't rule it out, but even at 30 frames, I still found it really enjoyable. So for me, this gets a strong recommendation. Now, you could make the argument that maybe it's nostalgia for the original that's making me give this game high marks, and that's perfectly fair. This is not going to be an RPG that's going to challenge you, in my opinion. Like, that's one thing I definitely want to say right off the bat. If you are coming into this game hoping for like something challenging that's really going to give you something to sink your teeth into, you're not going to get that. Not only is it not very challenging, it's also not a very long game. Like, I didn't time it, but I want to say it took me probably around 20 hours to beat the game, roughly. I did do a few side quests. I did some side content here and there. Not a great deal. I didn't platinum the game, but still, I mean, yeah, about 20 hours for the main story. So, yeah, this is not Dragon Quest. This is not going to take you, 70 hours to beat. Like, I played Dragon Quest XI a few years ago, and that game, just the main quest, I think I put in at least 70 hours into that game. So yeah, this is not a very long game. It's not especially challenging. To me, it's just something that I feel like, if you've got kids, you can enjoy it with them. People like me who grew up with this game back in 2004, a lot of them probably have kids now. So yeah, if you're one of those people that has kids, this is something that you can enjoy with them as well. I think it's very kid friendly. Like I said before, it's a good way, I think, to introduce your kids into turn-based RPGs without like overwhelming them or making them get frustrated. There were never any moments in this game like where I died or just got felt super challenged or out of my depth with any boss fight. Like, most of the boss fights you can get through just fine as long as you just use some common sense. But yeah, for me, this game gets a strong recommendation, and especially since we're coming near the end of the life cycle of the current Switch console, I think this is definitely a good game to add to your library. Again, even if you're not a fan of the original and you never played it, this is probably a perfect place to start with it. And also, too, in that same vein, I saw recently that Nintendo had sent out a survey to people, basically asking them for what they wanted to see in future Paper Mario titles. And some of the choices they gave people were like things like, partners, RPG elements, like leveling up, big overworlds, things like that. Things that people have been missing from the Paper Mario series for a long time. So hopefully maybe this is a sign that we're going to get more games like Thousand Year Door. As of right now, I believe it's sold, I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but I think it's sold more units than the Origami King. So it seems like this is selling really well. I know when I went to go buy this from GameStop, when I went to go ask for my copy, the guy at the counter told me that like they had tons of people going in there to buy it. And then I guess the Best Buy near them had sold out. So it sounds like this game is selling really well, which that has me excited. The fact that it's already doing better than Origami King, that gives me hope that maybe we're going to see more games like this in the future. I'd love it if Nintendo remade the N64 version. I don't know if they will, but what I would really love to see more than anything else is just a proper sequel, an actual legitimate Paper Mario sequel that is in the same vein as Thousand Year Door. If we got something like that in the next Paper Mario title, I would be ecstatic, and I feel like millions of people would feel the same. We've been averaging a Paper Mario game, I think, every 4 years since Thousand Year Door, so sounds like 2028 might be the next release, so hopefully then we'll see something similar to this game. But for now, I think this is definitely going to be something that's worth checking out. As one of the, last few titles in the life cycle of the Switch, I think this is definitely something that's worth picking up. So I highly recommend it. So the next thing I want to talk about, I wasn't actually going to talk about this in this podcast. I was just going to leave off with a review, but I saw the trailer for this movie called The Wild Robot, and I just had to discuss this trailer. This snuck up on me. I did not know about this movie. I had no idea this was even happening. It comes out September 27th of this year. So it's an animated movie from DreamWorks. It's directed by Chris Sanders, who I was looking at his filmography, and he did How to Train Your Dragon films. I'm pulling it up right now as I'm looking at it. He also directed Mulan, Aladdin, or he helped make them. He didn't direct them. but yeah, man, he's been involved in a lot of big animated projects and stuff. But yeah, I saw the trailer for this earlier today, and this movie, man, I don't remember the last time I was this excited to see an animated movie, but just something about this really grabbed me. Like, I love animated films. I love robots in animated films, and the design of the robot in this really caught my interest. It reminds me of the robot from, I think it's the Hayao Miyazaki film Castle in the Sky. There's like a robot like thing in that movie. This one kind of reminds me of that film a little bit, but the story seems to be following a robot that's taking care of this baby goose. It's trying to teach it how to fly. And it's going against its programming. The other robots show up, and they're trying to get this robot to go back to the way it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be living amongst these animals, but the robot, as it stays on this island, it gets more and more attached to them. Apparently, this is an adaptation based off of a book by Peter Brown, I believe. So I didn't know that either. So I learned a lot about this doing research for this movie. The voice cast also looks pretty stellar. Let me go back to the page here. Lupita Nyong'o plays the robot, and then Pedro Pascal plays this fox that's in the trailer. We also have Kit Connor, Bill Nighy, which I thought I recognized his voice in this. Mark Hamill apparently has a voice credit as well, although I didn't hear him in the trailer, or at least if I did, I didn't recognize him. Yeah, just right off the bat, this one really caught my interest. Like, I don't pay too close attention to animated films anymore, I'm sorry to say. Like, I really do want to see Inside Out 2, because I love the first one. But beyond that, I haven't really paid too close attention to animated films in recent years, at least not newer ones. But man, this movie just looks awesome. A couple of things about the trailer that really kind of stood out to me is, number one, like I love the scene where the fox, when they're trying to teach the baby goose how to swim, and the fox just kicks him into the water. Like, that really caught me off guard. I was not expecting that for something that seems like it's supposed to be geared towards kids. Something else too is I like how the other robots in the trailer, they remind me of the robots from the game Portal 2. Just their design, they have like that slick kind of white design, but they have like the glowing eyes and stuff. Like, there's a lot of like, their design's very circular looking, so like that's kind of what they made me think of, was like the robots from Portal. Yeah, and I kind of like this whole sort of like nature versus technology theme that the film is trying to go for. Something else I like too is just like I like the use of colors in the trailer as well. There's a lot of really bright like red colors that really pop. Like, there's this one part in the trailer where it shows the robot running out of the ship and jumping through it, or jumping out of this escape hatch, and you see like just these bright like orange red flashes behind it, and just something about the color they use in this just really popped out at me. Yeah, everything about it just looks really good. Like, I'm genuinely excited for this movie. So if I check this out, I'll definitely make sure to give a review for it. But just, yeah, something about this, like, again, like, I don't get super excited about animated films that much anymore. But yeah, this movie really has me, not just because of the cast. It's got a pretty stellar cast in my opinion, but just the look of it. I really dig the look of the animals as well. They kind of have, the way they look, their eyes, their expressions, kind of makes me think of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. There's this, like, it's obviously, you can tell it's CGI, but just like the way some of their eyes are animated, they look almost kind of like cartoony or 2D animation, which is what Puss in Boots kind of had in The Last Wish, which I really dug. I haven't seen that movie either. I really want to, because I've heard it's incredible. But yeah, like, I love the risk it seems like a lot of animators are taking with animation these days. Like, with the new Spider-Verse films, like, the animation in those is absolutely incredible. The Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem movie, like, again, very similar, at least to me it looks kind of similar animation style to the Spider-Verse films. Like, I really enjoy when artists take risks with how their animated film is going to look. That's, to me, I always appreciate that. Even if it doesn't necessarily work out, I always like it when they're willing to try to make something look just a little bit different. I mean, not that this goes to that extreme. The animation looks pretty standard fare from what you would expect from DreamWorks, but still, like, I don't know, it just looks fresh enough that I really like it. I wouldn't say, like, I know people are probably going to make comparisons between this and WALL-E. I wouldn't quite go that far. Like, WALL-E to me kind of has like almost this, like, when you see WALL-E in the beginning of the movie, he has almost kind of like this dirty look to him because he's been on Earth for a long time. And then when Eve shows up, she's got like this very pristine look, like she's very clean, got that white slick surface. There's a little of that in this movie. But what I like about it is in the trailer, it shows like as the robot spends more time with the animals, she starts to grow moss, like on, well, it's a robot, but I guess it's because it's voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, but the robot has moss that it starts to grow on its outer shell or its outer armor or plating or whatever, and kind of showing that it's becoming more of a wild robot. Another thing I like in the trailer was I like when it starts to like study the animals and it starts to like learn their language, because like when it first encounters them, it doesn't know what they're saying, even though it's trying to help them. I guess that's like the robot's whole purpose, is it's trying to help other creatures, and like it sees animals getting attacked or hurt, so it wants to like help them. And so it just shows the robot sitting there watching the animals and just trying to learn their language, and then it finally does, and it can talk to them, which is, I thought that was really funny. The only thing about the trailer that I didn't like was there's this one scene where when it first meets the baby goose, and the goose lets out this scream, and it's like that standard ADR scream that you hear in like every movie, like that woman shrieking at the top of her lungs. Like I've heard it in like so many movies and shows whenever they're trying to portray somebody screaming, and like when I heard that, it kind of took me out of the experience a little bit. I wish they could have just had the actual voice actor just do the voice for that, but it's a minor nitpick. But regardless, I mean, yeah, it does feel like the trailer did reveal quite a bit of the plot. It would have been nice if they could have left a little bit more to the imagination. Like, I kind of feel like we got a lot of the main story beats in this trailer. I think this was the second one that I watched. I think the original came out a couple months ago, if I'm not mistaken. Regardless, though, I mean, yeah, I'm genuinely excited to see this, and my hope is that maybe along with Inside Out 2, I mean, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but maybe we're going to start going back to like, you know, really good, decent animated films again. I just kind of feel like in the last few years, animated films have just been not necessarily bad, but just outside of like Into the Spider-Verse and stuff, like I haven't really gotten super excited about, you know, a lot of animated features lately. So this one caught my interest, so I'll be keeping an eye out on this one. All right, everyone, I think that's going to conclude tonight's episode. Once again, if you like what you heard, I am on Anchor, Spotify, and YouTube. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you all next time. Later.